Hi everyone, it's Miss Tang here, and today we are going to be looking at equivalent fractions. So we are learning to recognize equivalent fractions, and to be successful you'll need to learn how to use the equivalent fractions rule, be able to recognize equivalent fractions for halves, thirds, quarters, fifths and eighths, and also be able to order your fractions from smallest to largest or largest to smallest. So a fraction is part of a whole. So just like this rectangle here, there is a fraction. So this is a whole rectangle and it's been divided into thirds. So 3 equal parts. So fractions always have equal parts, and we can see that the blue, this rectangle, is 1/3 of the whole, and it's 1/3 blue. So that's what fractions are. So that's one piece out of 3. And now we have it written here as well. So we call it 1/3 or 1/3 and or 1 out of 3. And this top number is actually called the numerator. So the numerator tells you how many pieces of the whole that you have. So 1 piece out of 3 is blue, so you've got 1. That's why there's a 1 there. And then the bottom number is called the denominator. So the denominator tells you how many pieces there are in that whole, so that make up the whole. Okay, so if you have a look. All right, so a unit fraction is any fraction with a numerator of 1. Okay, so that's 1 piece out of the whole. So for example, 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, they're all unit fractions. And you will also need to learn how to order these unit fractions from smallest to largest or largest to smallest. Okay, so a really good way of trying to figure out what's small, what's the largest, is if the denominator, so the bottom number, is large, then it's actually smaller. Okay, the smaller the unit fraction. So I'll just give you an example here. So for example, let's have a look at these circles. Okay, so this is 1/2 or 1 out of the 2 parts. This is a third, so 1 out of 3. This is a quarter of a circle, 1 out of 4. And this is 1 out of 8 parts. Okay, so an eighth, a quarter, a third, a half. So as you can see, if you have a look at the bottom, the denominator, the larger the denominator, the more parts there are that you have to share or split it into. Okay, so for example, you might have a think about, a pizza. Would you rather half a pizza, or would you rather 1/8 of a pizza? So even though this is a large number down here, it means that you're going to have to share that pizza with 8 people. Okay, or 8 times. So your slice is actually going to be smaller. So this question here, which fraction is the smallest? So if you have a look at these images, it would be the eighth. So 1 out of 8 is the smallest fraction. So the more pieces there are, the smaller the piece is going to become, because the more people you have to share it with, the smaller piece you get. All right, let's have a look at this. Ordering these fractions from smallest to largest. So we have 1/3 of a bar. So as you can see, all of these bars are the exact same size, and they have been split into different equal parts. So this third, 1/3, 2 parts. So this is a half of a bar, this is 1/5 of a bar, and this is 1/4 of a bar. So now we have to figure out what's the smallest. Now this is pretty easy because we can compare. Look, we can compare how small or large they are. So I would definitely say 1/5 of a bar is the smallest, especially because you're going to have to share with 5 people instead of 2. Okay, so that's the smallest, and then the next one would be a quarter, and then the next one would be a third, and the largest fraction would be a half. So let's see. There you go. So 1/5, 1/4, 1/3, and then a half. All right, let's have a look at equivalent fractions. So equivalent fractions are fractions where they have the same value, even though they are written a bit differently. So for example, if you've got 1/2, 2/4, and 4/8, they are all actually equivalent fractions because they are all showing the same value, so the same thing. And I'll be able to show you some examples in a moment. So to find a fraction that is equivalent to another fraction, then there is a rule that you can use to help you. So for example, you can make equivalent fractions by multiplying. So this is where you'll need your multiplication and your division knowledge as well. Okay, you can multiply or divide both the numerator, so the top number, and the denominator by the same number. So let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so let's have a look at these squares. So for example, you've got 1/2 of a square. Okay, so because it's divided into two parts, and this is equivalent, so this is the same as 2/4. So if you have a look at this same size square, even though it's been divided up into 4 parts, 2 out of the 4 parts is exactly the same as 1/2 of a square. So a half of a square is exactly or is equivalent to 2/4 of a square. Now, if you have a look at this square as well, it has been split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 parts. And as you can see, there are 4 parts that have been colored in and are yellow. So as you can see, this is looking very similar to 2/4 and 1/2. And that's because they are all equivalent fractions. So 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4, and it's also equivalent to 4/8. Okay? All right, so a way to figure out your equivalent fractions is you can multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. So for example, if you multiply the top, so the numerator and the denominator by 2, then 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so if you were trying to find equivalent fractions of a half, or 1 out of 2, then you need to multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. And if you wanted to keep finding some more equivalent fractions, then you would do the same to this one as well. So 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. Okay? If you wanted to find another one, then you would also multiply these two numbers, the numerator and the denominator, by 2 again, because there are a lot more equivalent fractions. So half, 1 out of 2 is equivalent to 2 out of 4, or 2/4, and this is also equivalent to 4/8 as well. If you wanted to find another equivalent fraction, then you just multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2. So if you did that, it would be 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. So that would also be another equivalent fraction. Now here's another way. Instead of multiplying, you can also, let's have a look. So there's these two fractions here, and we've got, let's see, what is it out of? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is out of 6. So it's in sixths, and it's 2. So it's 2 out of 6, and this is split into 1, 2, 3, and it's a third. So 2/6 of a bar is the same as 1/3 of a bar, because if you have a look, it is the same. Okay, so if you split this in half and split this in half, split this in half again, you would actually have 6 pieces or 6 parts just like this. And if you have 2 parts of this colored in, that is the exact same as 1/3 of a bar. So here we go. You've got 2 over 6, or 2 out of 6 is equivalent to 1 out of 3. And just like before, how you can multiply, you can also divide if you can. So for example, you can do divided by 2. If you're going to divide, you need to do it for the top and the bottom. Okay, so 2 divided by 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that's how else you can find equivalent fractions. You can also divide, but you need to do it by the same number, or you can multiply. Okay? All right, let's do these together. So, equivalent fractions wall. So you'll need to be able to read this wall. So if you have a look, we have one whole, and then this whole has been divided into halves. So there are now 2 parts. And now these are the thirds because it's been split into 3 parts. These are the quarters, the fifths, sixths, sevenths, eighths, ninths, and tenths. All right, let's have a look at number 1. Use a red pencil to color in 1/2 of the halves row. Use the fraction wall to find the fractions that are the same size as 1/2. All right, so I would go in, and if you had a copy of this, then you would do this on your copy. So I would color that in red, so this half, so it says 1/2. Okay, so I would color that in red, and then you need to find what also equals to 1/2. So the first one is quarters. How many quarters equal to 1/2? So if I color that in, then I can see, look at my quarters, that if I had 1, 2, 2 quarters would equal to my 1/2. So I would put 2 quarters. And now it's looking for the sixth. So I'm going to have a look down on the sixths. And let's have a look. This is my half. Now how many sixths is equal to a half? So if you have a look down here, I'll count 1, 2, 3 sixths are equal to a half. So I would put 3 sixths. And then you are going to have a look at the eighths column and see if you can find how many eighths equal to a half. And then the next one, how many tenths equal to a half. Okay? Number 2, use a green pencil to color in 1/3. So you get a green pencil, color in the third, just here, and then you use this fraction wall and see if you can find fractions that equal to 1/3. So 1/3 equals how many sixths, how many ninths. So you need to look at the 6th row and see how many of these equal to a third. Look at the ninths, how many of these equal to a third. So see if you can give that a go. Okay, number 3, use a blue pencil now to color in 1/4. So you'll color in 1/4 and then see if you can find how many eighths is equal to 1/4. So you go down to the eighths and see if you can figure out how many. Number 4, you do the same thing with the yellow pencil. So you find a yellow pencil, you go and color in 1/5. So you color in 1/5 and then have a look at the tenths. How many tenths equal to 1/5? All right, number 5, you're going to use the fraction wall to order these fractions from smallest to largest. You might like to actually color code. Okay, so for example, I might color this in pink, so 2/10, and then I'd find down here and I'll color in 2/10. So I would color in this pink, I'll color this pink as well. Okay, 2/10, I'd color that in pink. You will have a color for half, Okay, so I believe it was, I think it was a red. So red would already be colored in half. 6 out of 6, you can find another color that you haven't used and color in 6 out of 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you color in that whole row with a certain color. If you want to make it blue, you can make it blue or purple, etc. You just color in 6 out of 6. And then you've got 3 out of 7. So you go to the 7ths and then you pick another color and color in 3 sevenths. 1 out of 9 or 1/9. Find another color, color in 1/9. And then you can pick a different color and color in 3/4. So 1, 2, 3. So you color that. And then once you've done that, you will be able to easily see which one is the smallest to largest fraction. And then all you have to do is just write it in. So find out which one was the smallest. Write your fraction in there. Which one was the largest? Write it in there. And then see if you can order it. Number 6, use the fraction wall to compare the following pairs of fractions. Use the less than, so this is the less than symbol, and this is the greater than symbol. Sign and make these statements true. So 2/3 is it less than or greater than a half? So you have to have a look. So that's 2/3 and this is a half. So is 2/3 greater than half or is it less than a half? Okay, so see if you can compare these two fractions. All right, give it a go.